So it seems that over a third of you think that 10th edition 40k might well be on the horizon. Let's talk about when it might surface and the odds of it being this weekend. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today I thought it might be fun to take a video to discuss when 10th edition 40k might well be released, particularly with the vast majority of 9th edition codexes out, and apparently with a big and quotation mark special preview coming from Games Workshop at the weekend. It would seem to me to be a bit early for them to announce it at the moment, but it does seem like at least a sizable portion of the community does think that it might be on the cards. As most people who have been playing 40k for a while will know, the game comes in editions. When Games Workshop announces a new edition, they redo the core rulebook, and at least over 8th and 9th edition they give new support and new codexes to every single army, though that isn't actually something that they used to do in the past, and only some factions would get updated. Some factions could go an entire edition without getting a new codex. There have been several rumours out there circulating the internet that the next edition of 40k will come out sometime in 2023, not necessarily early in the year, but perhaps somewhere in summertime, kind of similar to 9th edition. I feel like as rumours go, it's a moderately safe one for people to make. The last couple of editions have been around about 3 years in length, so mid-2023 would seem kind of likely for the new one to materialise, and Games Workshop to start the cycle with a bunch of fun new miniatures once again. There have been a lot of rumours circulating the internet, in particular that we seem kind of overdue for another Loyalist Primarch at some stage. We've got Guilliman facing off against Magnus, Mortarion and now Angron as well, and there's multiple Loyalists that they could return at any second, particularly the Lion and Leman Russ seem quite likely, though we did have that rumour about Blood Angels versus Tyranids, and basically a progression of the Blood Angels Sanguinor to more fully represent a reincarnation of Sanguinius himself. That same rumour did mention that Tyranids might well be a possible adversary faction for the edition launch. Generally the normal procedure is to have Space Marines of some variety face off against a different 40k faction. We've had Necrons in 9th, Death Guard in 8th edition, and Chaos Space Marines in 6th and 7th. At least on paper the Tyranids do look like a pretty plausible candidate. Most of the other factions have had a fairly decent range release at some stage in the last few years, but unless you're counting Genestealer cults, Tyranids have had pretty well nothing. They've got plenty of options for shiny new resculpts as well, things like Tyranid Genestealers or Termagants. Now Games Workshop are gearing up for a big reveal this weekend, and with the possibility of a new edition sometime within the next 8 months, it does seem to have got at least a few people questioning whether or not this could be the big drop. I mentioned the previews in a predictions video just the other week. Usually with Games Workshop's previews they tend to give out some slightly faction specific hints, but for this one it's very general purpose. Lots of pictures from across 40k in general, 35 years of Warhammer, monster previews, an entire session dedicated just to Warhammer 40k itself, and in the promotional posts for this new preview we've got quite a lot of pictures of the various different starter boxes throughout 40k's history. They all featured in the channel trailer for it, and then Games Workshop today just posted this to their social media asking us which of 40k's editions is our favourite, and again the focus really does seem to be on editions of the game, something that they don't usually tend to bring up all that often. Perhaps it's not too surprising that with this, and knowing that 10th edition is almost guaranteed to be coming out sometime within the year, that Games Workshop might be trying to get ahead of the crowd and drop the news early, but it's perfectly possible it could be other things. I do have one other fairly specific guess which we'll get onto in a second. In any case, if we're going for odds via the community, I did ask this channel poll just today, sharing Games Workshop's latest post and asking if this preview is likely to be showing off 10th edition, or whether or not at this point it's simply too early, and it would be pointless for them to build hype this far in advance. General consensus seems to be that it's unlikely, but the vote is perhaps a little bit more split than I thought it would be, with well over a third of people thinking that Games Workshop might announce 10th edition at the weekend, and at least for some of the comments it does seem like people are ready for a change from 9th edition, and people's various issues with it. I have to admit, if I'm going to be speculating myself, I am with the majority on this one. I personally guess that there's a less than 38% chance of Games Workshop announcing 10th edition at the weekend, despite general hype, a big preview, and lots of starter box pictures. If I'm wrong, I'm not going to be disappointed, but I do feel that it just seems a little bit unlikely at this point. I think in general it's not really in Games Workshop's interest to announce an edition too far before when it actually releases, as they're perhaps well versed in managing their own hype, trying to build people's expectations near the time, and not just let things fester for so long that people lose interest and get bored by the time the product actually comes along. If we go by 8th and 9th edition and the usual way that they do things, They've typically only officially announced a new edition of the game 2 months prior to it releasing. That was the case for both 8th and 9th, and then from there we're in a bit of a limbo stage when we're looking at previews and things. In 9th edition, I think that the hype particularly caught on, as a lot of people around the world were stuck indoors sheltering from the pandemic. Now I guess it's not guaranteed that they'll do exactly what they did in the past, but it does seem the most likely case of affairs, and that would have the new edition coming out just before Christmas, which seems far too early for me. I have a feeling that they wouldn't want to announce an edition, say like 8 months in advance or whatever, and particularly not when they still have codexes to release. If it did come out in December, it would basically be saying that the Imperial Guard effectively get no codex whatsoever in 9th edition, which is unlikely to be popular. And if they did announce it and it was coming out mid-2023, I think it would kind of kill any enthusiasm for the releases before then. I'm sure people would enjoy them, but it might be a bit more muted, knowing that most of the rules for the game are on borrowed time at that point. Still though, with quite such a big comprehensive codex release, I do feel that it's unlikely that they're going to invalidate all the 9th edition codexes in 10th, so unless they do surprise us all with a hard reset, hopefully the vast majority of rules would still be functional, and the latter codexes in the edition still would get a good time to use them. Finally, another pattern that they would be going against by announcing a new edition now is that they've usually tended to end the editions with a campaign series, say the Gathering Storm in 7th edition and Psychic Awakening in 8th. With only the one codex left, it does seem like we could be well in store for one of those things now, and I feel like there's at least a reasonable possibility that they announce this kind of series in this new update, which wouldn't be an announcement of 10th edition, but basically would be an announcement of the beginning of the end for 9th. If we do go with the idea that Games Workshop probably aren't going to announce 10th edition this weekend, it does beg the question why they're showing loads of starter boxes on their previews though. I guess it certainly could just be a nostalgia trip from Games Workshop, deciding to celebrate 35 years of 40k, but the starter boxes do seem oddly specific, and it isn't just general 40k artwork and things, it really is those box set artwork that keeps on coming up. I did see one idea that I found down in the comments that I do quite like, and it might be that they might be doing a reprint of these past starter boxes, perhaps every single one if we're lucky. Maybe that is a touch outlandish, that would be really quite a lot of sets for Games Workshop to drop at once, but they did set a bit of a precedent for it last year when they brought back this 3rd edition starter set out of the blue, and basically gave everyone the opportunity to buy an old style Land Speeder, Space Marines and Drukhari Kabbalite Warriors. These guys dated back from when the Drukhari were just the Dark Eldar. I feel like this could fit in very neatly with the preview materials they've given us so far, asking us which are our favourite editions before trying to sell us nostalgia things from editions past. If it came out to a similar sort of pattern to this made-to-order set, it would be just the miniatures and not the terrain or the books or anything. But still, I think it's quite a fun and quirky idea that you could jump into 40k with any edition as a starter point, and I feel like there's a very big nostalgia trip for anyone who got into the game with one of these sets. The 3rd edition starter set was actually my first entry into 40k, though I certainly have very fond memories of Assault on Black Reach. Not sure how likely that is though. I do seem to remember that there was some sort of legal issue with the Black Reach Deathcopters, which is why they didn't reprint them again, but I honestly don't know enough to talk intelligently about that. In any case though, that's all a bit of speculation on my part. Do you think that a reprint of the 40k boxes could be likely or something that you'd be interested in? And if that isn't the case, are we going to be getting anything else special, aside from just the things that we might expect from the previews, things like Imperial Guard, World Eaters, Kill Team, and maybe that campaign book series? In any case, I'll certainly be covering the previews on the 8th. Hopefully should be a lot to talk about for multiple different factions. If you'd like to see that, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics or check back later. And finally, I'll just end by mentioning the channel's Patreon page briefly. That is what allows me to keep on making videos like this quite so regularly, and if you are enjoying a lot, then any support is enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, such as seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.